I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 6 English lesson on prefixes. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 6. Once you've selected our English Language Arts grade 6, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of prefixes. All right. So in our previous lesson, we did prefixes, right? And we specifically focus on words with pre, and we also focus on words with re, right? That is in our previous lesson. And prefix is basically words that we add to the beginning of a root word or beginning of a base word. It's words that we add it to the beginning of a root word or a base word. And remember, a base word is a word that can stand on its own, right? It's a word that can stand on its own. But then we then have our prefix, right? It's then basically a word that we add, or let's say letters that we add just in front of that base word, right? And then it creates a new word, right? And we made an example last week or last time of pre as well as re, right? So in today's lesson, right, our chapter is prefix once again. Our subject is English Language Arts, grade 6. And the lessons that we will be focusing on today under the chapter of prefixes is words with sub, words with miss, as well as words with un, dis, in, im, and non. Right? So that is going to be our lessons for today under chapter of prefixes. All right, so we see that a prefix, it can be added to the beginning of a base word to create a new one. And remember, we said a base word is a word that can stand on its own, right? And then prefix is either a word or it is letters that is added to the beginning of that base word. And then we basically create a new word. And knowing the meaning of a prefix, right? This is now that letters or word that you add to the beginning of a base word. So knowing the meaning of the prefix, it can help you to determine the meaning of a specific word, because then it will make it much more easier for you to understand what the base word is, because you'll understand what the base word is, and you'll be able to understand what the prefix is. And then when you put it together, then you will be able to find what this new word is that you have created. All right, so a prefix sub, right? A prefix sub, it means under, below, or less than, right? So think of words like submarine, right? Submarine is, let's say, a closed type of form of transportation, right? That you can use underwater, right? So sub is under, so we can use it underwater. And that is a submarine. And if we look at the examples of the prefix sub, right? The prefix sub, we said it means under, below, or less than, right? And this helps to determine that paying a bill would subtract from a bank account, right? So which means it's subtract, right? It means to remove, subtract means to remove or to take away from. That is subtract. To remove or to take away from. That is why even when we do subtraction and addition sums in class or during maths, subtraction is removing, right? If we say 5 minus, which is subtracting 2, right? Then it means that I have 5 and I am removing 2. I'm taking away 2. And then it means that I have 3 left. And that is basically subtracting. We are removing or taking away from that X amount. Another example is, right? Or let's say before we go on to subtracting, right? If we subtract bills from our bank account, right? Then we can really say that paying bills, it removes or it takes away that X amount from our bank account, right? Or from a salary that we got. If we look at another example, it would mean that subcontinent, right? And subcontinent, it is a division. And subcontinent, it's a division of land within a continent. So we have our continents, right? And we see that there are continents within the world. And then we have our subcontinents, and it's a division of land within our continents. For example, like India, it's a bordering country that forms a subcontinent. And they are then part of a larger continent, which is in Asia. But India is a subcontinent, right? Then we go on to the prefix miss, right? And the prefix miss, it means incorrectly or it means badly. Incorrectly or badly. And if we look at an example of our prefix miss, right, it says, which is an example of misbehavior. This is basically a word that we've heard already, right? And remember, misbehavior is when we are breaking rules, we are not listening, right? That is misbehavior. It's like you are misbehaving. You're breaking rules, you're not listening. Because behavior means the opposite of misbehavior, because behavior means that you're following the rules, you're listening, you're doing what you're told, right? But misbehavior, which is the opposite of behavior, right? It means that you're breaking the rules, you are not doing what you're told. And then why might a nurse mismeasure a patient's temperature? A nurse might mismeasure a patient's temperature because the thermometer is broken. They won't just mismanage or mismeasure your temperature, let's say on purpose. All right. So once again, right, we said that when it comes to prefixes, knowing the meaning of a prefix, it can really help to determine the meaning of the word. And if we even look at this word miss, right, especially with misbehavior, if we break down that word, right, behavior and misbehavior, then it means that misbehavior and behavior are literally opposite to one another. Because behavior means that you are following the rules, you're doing what you're told, right? You're being a good person, right? But misbehavior, right? Misbehavior, it means that you are breaking the rules and you are not doing what you ought to do. You're breaking the rules, you're not listening, and you're not doing what you're told to do. All right, so we said once again that knowing the meaning of a prefix, right, it can basically help you to understand the meaning or to basically determine the meaning of what the new word will be. Because remember, we said that the prefix is a word that is added to the beginning of a base word, right? So the base word already has its own meaning, and we made an example of behavior, right? As soon as we add the prefix to that word behavior, for example, right, it either changes that word, right, But knowing the prefix of the word will help you to determine what the new word will be or the meaning is of the new word that you will be creating. All right. So now we're going to A plus students.ca and we're going to do our tutorial lesson as well as our test. And we're going to use words with sub, right? And remember we said sub, it means either under, it means below, it means less than, right? That is the meaning of sub. Under, below, or less than. All right. So if we look at it says, how would you take a sublingual medicine? A sublingual medicine and a sublingual medicine, right? You will be able to take it by putting it under your tongue. A sublingual medicine. And remember, we said sub, right? It means under, below, or less than, right? And sublingual, right, is something that it's to do with applying it under the tongue or putting it under the tongue, right? It's like those glands that you have here under your tongue. That is why we say, how would you take a sublingual medicine? Sublingual medicine we will take by putting it under your tongue. We made an example of subtracting. Remember, subtracting is either removing or taking away. And we made an example when we said, five, I have five sweets. So I have five sweets. I subtract two, right? If I subtract two from my five or remove two from the five, I have three left. All right, so that is subtracting, right? And sub is our prefix that is added to our base word, which is basically subtract or tract, right? All right. Let us do a test on the prefix words with sub. Where might you find a subway? Where might we find a subway? Will we find a subway on the street or will we find a subway underground? Where will we find a subway? Will we find a subway on the street or will we find a subway underground? Subway. All right. So we said that when it comes to subway, right? A subway is underground. Okay, which is a subcontinent, right? We said a subcontinent, right, is basically part of the main continent. Is a subcontinent Asia or is a subcontinent India? The subcontinent. Is it Asia or is it India and its bordering countries? All right, so we said that a subcontinent is India and its bordering countries, right? That is basically part of or just under or in the continent of Asia. All right. If a sub project, right, takes 2 weeks to complete, how long might the overall project take? Will the overall project take more than 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks? Sub project. All right. So if a sub project takes 2 weeks to complete, right? How long might the overall project take? The overall project will then take more than 2 weeks. Because remember, a sub project is almost like saying that it is a lesser or smaller project, right? Before the main product, the project. All right, one more. Who is better equipped for subsea exploration? Is it like subsea? Think of something underwater, right? Under the sea. So, who is better equipped for subsea exploration? Is it a scuba diver or a sailor? A scuba diver or a sailor? Who is better equipped for a subsea exploration? It's like exploring under the sea. Is it a scuba diver or a sailor? Sorry. All right. And the person who is better equipped for subsea exploration, we will then say yes, a scuba diver, which is option one, right? Because a scuba diver is also better equipped to basically dive underwater, stay longer underwater. They will know how to control their bodies and everything underwater compared to a sailor that knows how to sail a boat or ship. So option one is correct. So well done. All right, so now words with miss, right? Remember we said miss means either incorrectly or it means badly, right? So it means incorrectly or it means badly. So what could cause an umpire to misjudge a pitch? An umpire to misjudge a pitch, right? And over here it says an umpire, right? What might cause an umpire to misjudge a pitch might be a blocked view. So if he or she cannot see, then by all means he will not be able to see or he'll be able to misjudge whatever that's happening on the pitch, right? That is only if the view is blocked. How can a reporter make sure that she does not misquote a source? Remember, a reporter, right, is like it can either be a journalist for magazine, newspaper, right? And when they ask, how do we make sure that a reporter does not misquote a source, right? Remember, if you need to give your statement or tell your side of a story, right? Most times the reporters put it in their own words. But when it comes to quoting whatever the next person says, then it means that you need to directly, or that reporter need to directly utter the words or repeat the words that you have said as a person, right? So in order for a reporter to not misquote a source, right? Then he or she can then use a recording device. So by recording the conversation, it will be much more easy to quote word by word what the person said without misquoting it, without quoting it incorrectly. All right, so now we're going to our test, right? And remember, we said miss either means incorrectly or it means badly, right? So, which word is a speaker less likely to mispronounce? Which word is a speaker less likely to mispronounce? Is it an unfamiliar word or a familiar word? Think of yourself. What would you be able to mispronounce? Is it a word that you're familiar with or a word that you're unfamiliar with? All right. So a speaker, right, is less likely to mispronounce a word, right, that is unfamiliar to him or her, right? So which word is a speaker less likely to mispronounce? We would then say an unfamiliar word, right? Because remember, you don't know. Oh, less likely, sorry, less likely. Less likely means that which word is a speaker less likely to mispronounce, right? Less likely means that he will not be able to mispronounce that word. He will say it correctly. So it's a familiar word. I think we got the reading a bit wrong. Both of us got the reading wrong. Why might a nurse mismeasure a patient's temperature? Is it option one because the thermometer is broken, or option two because the patient is becoming sicker? Why might a nurse mismeasure a patient's temperature? Option one because the thermometer is broken, or option two because the patient has become sicker. All right, so we might a nurse might mismeasure a patient's temperature only because a thermometer is broken. So well done. Option one is correct. So well done. What is a mismanaged business more likely to do? If you don't manage it correctly, that is mismanage. Remember, we said mis means incorrectly. So it means that if we manage a business incorrectly, right? What is a mismanaged business more likely to do? Are they still able to succeed or will they fail? Option one, will it succeed? Or option two, will it fail? A mismanaged business. All right. So a mismanaged business is more likely to fail, right? Remember, if you do not manage a business very well, then your business is not going to succeed. Mismanaged. All right. So now we're going to words with un, dis, in, im, and non. These are also prefixes, right? And these are also words that we add to the beginning of a base word, right? And then we create a new word. And remember, we said that knowing the meaning of a prefix will help you to determine the meaning of a specific word. So these words, un, dis, in, im, and non, they usually mean not, or they mean the opposite of. So these words either means not or they mean the opposite of, right? So say for example, why might you feel disconnected from friends? So why might you feel disconnected from friends, right? You might feel disconnected from friends, remember, for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's because you haven't been in contact with them for a very long time. Sometimes it can be words that were said that is quite a bit harsh, right? Or discomforting. But most times, right, then the disconnection from friends is because you haven't heard from them in a while or in a long time, right? That is mainly why there's a disconnection between friends or from friends. Which word or which would you make water? Which would make water impure? Is it adding chemicals? So, which would make water impure, right? And what's something that would make water impure is by adding chemicals, right? And a lot of people think like adding chemicals to water, right, would make it more stiller, would make it more healthier, but you're actually making water more impure. And why might you take an indirect route? An indirect route because it is a nice scenery. It's like going for a nice drive around the mountain, around the beach, right? Those indirect routes are always way better than just going to a restaurant, going to the shops, and just doing what you always do. And once again, words like an, words like dis, in, im, and non, they mean not or they mean the opposite of. Think of disconnected. You're connected when you are together. Soon as you disconnect, it means that you're not together anymore. It is the opposite of connection, right? So now we're going to our test. Which activity, which activity do you think is unnecessary? Which activity is unnecessary? Is it watching television or eating food? So, which activity is unnecessary? Would we say watching TV is unnecessary or eating food is unnecessary? Because according to some of you, doing both is quite necessary. It's like I need to watch television and I need to eat. But now we need to choose one thing that is unnecessary. All right. So, an activity that is unnecessary, right? I think let's choose option one. So, it's television. I honestly wouldn't think that watching television is unnecessary. I think too much of something is unnecessary. So, watching television can be good, but too much of watching television might be unnecessary and bad. So, option one is correct. Well done. All right. Which word or which would make water impure? Is it adding chemicals to the water or adding ice to water and that will make it impure? Adding chemicals or adding ice? And something that might make water impure, it would be by adding chemicals, right? So the first option, yes, option one is correct. Well done. Which country is more independent? Is one that is controlled by another country or one that is controlled by itself? So, which country is more independent? Is it one that is controlled by another country or one that is controlled by itself. It's like the government and everybody controls it by itself. We are not really worried or controlled by other countries in order to gaining things. So a country that is more independent is the one that is controlled by another country or one that controls itself. All right. So if we say which country is more independent, remember we said independent, right, is where you can stand on your own as a person, right? All right. And a country that is more independently, right, stands on its own, we would say it's one that is controlled by itself. Yes, option two is correct because remember, independent, right? It means you can stand on your own, you control yourself, you basically don't need the help of the others, right? And that is what we do or what we mean by a country that is independently. They can control itself. So well done. Option two is correct. All right. So that is now the end of our lesson on prefixes, right? We said a pre is a word or let's say letters that is added to the beginning of a base word. And knowing the meaning of the base word will help you to understand the meaning of a word once we add the prefix as well as the word to that specific word to make a new word. Right? All right, so that is now the end of our lesson on prefixes. Thank you very much for joining the class. Really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.